10 after 6, so let's go ahead and get started. And begin with the invocation and the pledge. Heavenly Father, we come to you today asking for your guidance, wisdom, and support as we begin this meeting. Help us to engage in meaningful discussions. Allow us to grow closer as a group and nurture the bonds of community. Fill us with your grace, Lord God, as we make decisions that might affect our neighbors, residents, and friends in Simonton. Continue to remind us that all that we do here today, all that we accomplish, is for the pursuit of truth and the greater glory of you and for the service of humanity. We pray blessings on those who sacrifice to keep us safe at home and abroad, our volunteer military, and our first responders. We ask these things in your name. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, item 3 on our agenda is public comments. Ms. Nancy, do we have any comments today?
No, Your Honor.
Okay. New business is a workshop. I'm going to just briefly go through what you all have in your packet, since quite a bit of it is late-breaking copies this afternoon. The first one is the Excel format that we've been working with so far. It is the .309753 version that we've been discussing and using in our previous 3 workshops. Okay? And it has most all the notes in it. So that's also what was emailed to you last Friday, so we left it in because it's a good point of reference. Your next document is a legal memorandum, the summary of which is, if council does not set a budget and a tax rate, the rate will default to the no new revenue rate. The city must then budget based on that rate and pass a budget in order to spend funds. As a reminder, the no new revenue rate is 0.297978 cents per hundred. So slightly less than the version we've been working on. Then I've given you this is just the summary sheet with the Excel table at the top. It says City of Simonton Budget Workshop 4 ad valorem rate notes. So at the last workshop, we had requests for ability to look at a version written with a 21-cent rate, a 24-cent rate. We're already working on the .3097 rate, but I also included the .297978, which is the no new revenue rate, so that you can look at what the total income. I did not separate it out into ad valorem versus sales tax or other revenue sources, but you have that in your detail. So you can see what the income is at that rate, the total income, the expense as it currently stands. Obviously that'll change once we decide what we want to budget for. And then with no changes yet, that's how much each of those versions is short in balancing the budget. So for example, if you took the 21-cent rate, that as it is in the version in your packet today, you'd be $198,573 short of funding that budget with that reduced tax rate. So that's what each one of those lines mean. You'll have questions about that, how it reads, or what? Okay. A couple of notes that I added, just for reference, is that the current budget is .3000. I gave you the variance, which I noted just a minute ago. The difference on the budget worksheet that we were using last week to now is that Councilmember Haley noticed that the encumbered expense for the ARPA project was not on the expense side in the body of the budget. It was on the income side, but not on the expense side. So the reason that you see I showed you a balanced version last week, but now I'm showing you that that same number is not balanced because that $76,000 was not on the expense side. So that's another, right now, $59,000 or $60,000 that we'll need to make decisions about in order to balance. Okay? So you could see that and the explanation about it in that original, that Excel version that we were talking about first. And then the additional files that you have, it's just those 4 versions. So I gave you the full, every item that rolls up into those totals in here, and that's why you have these 33-page long versions. It can be done in Excel, but in order for you to see every single item and then be able to see which items roll up into your total pages, this is why I gave you those longer versions. Notes also do not print. They don't carry from one version to another. So when I created a 24-cent version or a 21-cent version, you have to manually repopulate those notes for each line. So the notes are the same. We may just have to do a little referring back to the previous. If you have a question, just ask me and we'll either find it right there or look it up if we can.
Budget that you gave us last week, the 30-cent budget, not to confuse it.
Yep.
2 quick questions. I see where you've put your note here that you said you added the $76,000 encumbered, and then you lowered, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4 items here, a few $1,000s.
Yep.
That comes up with the $64.5 difference in this 30-cent budget, and then you added the $100 from the child safety fee. So that's your $64.6 that you're showing on this particular budget. Okay.
Because this is an exported Excel version that I've been working on, something is missing, which I'm sure you can see, because the copy that you're looking at and that I gave you in the summary is $59,000. So there's a $5,000 or whatever that math is error between the two that I need to find for it to balance, but you shouldn't see a difference in the total, and you do.
Well, but we see an increase in that expense. I'm just trying to make sure I understand it correctly, because this is the one you gave us today. This is the one you gave us last week. Your expenses increased.
That's right.
By the $64.6, that is the explanation of where you put it in here. But your encumbered revenues, that's listed in your encumbered. So it's listed as an income, and then you put it in as an expense, and then reduce those as well. But our overall expenses, or working budget, if you will, increased.
Right, so we added $76,000 to the expense side. It was already on the income side. So it appeared that we had more income than we do versus expenses. Because then when you add it to the expense side, we're just out of balance. So it didn't go up exactly 76 because I recommended a couple of other cuts. If I hadn't done that, then you would see the difference would be exactly that 76,000 item for the ARPA project.
But your expenses went up by
your expenses are
went up to $64.6. It should balance itself out. I'm saying you have $76,000 worth of revenue. You made those cuts, and then you added that expense. That should balance it out, not make it increase.
It does balance now, but we were working with a version that was missing that expense. So you have to add the expense in on the expense side for it, so that those two things cancel each other out. But we were working under the assumption that we had all of our expenses listed. We did not, because we didn't have it on both sides of the equation.
But last week says balanced, and this one says it's not.
Right, I just
That's-
mentioned my error, that I
Okay,
didn't
but-
have it on both sides. Faith noticed it, I went back and worked on it this week and realized she was correct, that it was missing from the expense side. So I didn't make any changes to the zoning, the council priority of zoning. And really, I didn't make any other changes except the ones I highlighted in blue, so you could see reductions that I made and the addition of that 76,000 on the expense side.
So the expenses that were given last week were at 1.3. The expenses on this one that you just gave, or I'm sorry, the expenses on the one that you just gave us this time are up to the 415, or 1.45, or 1.15, excuse me, gosh, get it right in a minute. And the expenses that you use on this sheet are 1409. Which one is accurate?
Okay, I'm really sorry, you just said so many things in order, let me make
I'm
sure I'm
sorry.
following the correct one. So, the working version in Excel is, you're talking about the expense side is 1350857, right?
So that's the one you gave us last week, but
No,
this
that's the one
time,
that's-
that's income.
That's for today. I'm
Right.
sorry, income.
So on this sheet that you just gave us today, it says an expense of $1.415,457. The expenses listed on your sheet here, your budget workshop 4 sheet, says 1409911. And then the expenses on last week.
Okay, well, look, the best place to look, Courtney, if I have some small errors there, or look on the same version, the voter approval, should be the last one in your packet from today. On page 1, it says minus $59,047 at the top in red. So that first page, you'll see the income is $1,350,863. And then page 2, expenses of $1,409,911. So this is accurate. This is the most accurate, comes directly out of fund view. The version that we've been using also comes out of fund view, but I've been making lots of changes to it so that then I can go and put it in fund view when you say what you want to do and not create noise in the fund view.
Okay, so
So if it's off by some amount, I'll be happy to take a note about that and make sure. But you'll see that all 4 of the versions today have the expenses the exact same at $1,409,911. And that's why that's on that summary sheet, because I took it from these. That Excel working version says $1,415,000. We're working with $1,409,000. So like I said, there's a match somewhere that I need to find. I'll be happy to do that. To find where that $5,000 error is.
it's the 1415, and then last week was the 1350, so that's a $75,000 difference. But if we added the other in, because it was already in revenue, that would shift the other direction, it would balance itself out. Because of the decreases you did take, it wouldn't go, it's not a $5,000 difference in the expenses.
I don't think it's a $5,000 difference, but I'd be happy to go back and work on that once we have direction from council of which direction are we going. We'll look more on that.
Okay, and my only other question is this expense, current versus actual that you gave us last week.
Does it say financial statement on the corner?
This is the revenue and expense
Revenue
report
and expense,
that
okay.
you provided with us for us last week. And there are $0.
And Keep Simonton Beautiful?
No. There's very few dollars utilized when you get to EDC, in EDCA, I'll get it straight, I promise. EDC 4A, there's no revenue or expenses. In EDC 4A, Department of Revenue, again, there's no, that's just that $46,000 budget. no expenses, no revenue throughout all of EDC A4 or 4A. And then 4B is the same way, there's no current revenue or year-to-date expenses through 8/27. And then as well as 4B and Keep Simonton Beautiful. It shows absolutely no revenue or expense. I just want to verify that that's accurate because I don't know if the revenue is just going into it.
It's probably not, let me check, I don't want to say probably.
I'm sorry, I misspoke. There's one statement in the Keep Simonton Beautiful for 186905.
All right, I'm looking, are you talking about EDCA starting on page 10?
Yes, ma'am. Reflect as if those.
I don't have the answer specifically for you on that. I do know that Julie was on the phone on an appointment today with FundView, updating, learning a few things, and also having their assistance in updating some income and expense relating to EDC and the mowing expenses. So I'll have to confirm that, and we'll have an updated version, obviously, for you in September.
Okay.
With the monthly.
With this,
And then, sorry, the Keep Simonton Beautiful, that one expense listed, that probably is accurate for
I'm using this one.
August. I don't know what date that was paid, but that was greenery and holiday for the purchase.
Okay.
That
The
set them up for.
income, as far as revenue, so the reason I ask those questions, so that makes sense, is because there's, basically all this kind of, it would appear as though that money's just kind of sitting there because there's no revenue or expense that's been kind of transferred. But if you look at the general fund revenue, our current year budget was $887,252 at 30 cents per hundred. Year to date, we have a balance remaining of $306,130.51. We also collected $116,742.39 of additional ad valorem that we did not expect because it's an estimated tax rate. We are, into August, so we've got, as accurate as this is anyway, we still show a remaining balance of $306,000. I realize that money is probably spent or it is definitely accounted for. However, even at a 21-cent rate, we're going to be increasing the budget to $1.2 million.
So you're not actually increasing, yes, the budget will say that we're increasing to 1.2. You're not wrong about that. But don't forget, the only reason that is reflected is from the encumbered expenses from this year. So if you didn't have those encumbered expenses, you wouldn't be showing that, especially at your 21-cent rate.
But we're also not accounting for, at least not in this budget, any overages or under type things. Like our sales tax current year to date is 216. We're only valuing that at 209 next year. At a 31-cent rate, geez, that's $1.3 million. But I just don't think it's right to show the expenses at 1.4 when those categories were dedicated to that already. So that money is accounted for, kind of called out type thing.
That's why you have to show it on expense and income.
Correct. Yeah, I get that. I was just making sure I wasn't seeing things. There's a lot of numbers here.
So for comparison, on that very front page, we should talk about this last week, but there's a total for income, and I put a note under the account description column that says the adopted 2023 with road repair major, but also didn't have all these encumbered items, was $1,033,000. So if you take $1,350,000 and take out the $341,000 of encumbered expenses right there, that's how you can see that this is $1,009,000 in round numbers. It's also listed out there on the right-hand side at the bottom, $1,009,357. So the growth from 23 to 24 was $122,000.
I think that's from your current to your working, but what I'm saying is that your actual current is not what's listed here. So we show an actual on your proposal here of $343. We've actually collected $460,000. That's a $116,000 difference.
Right.
So that still has to, it's money coming in, it's still revenue. And then the sales tax that you're proposing on this budget, even at 30 cents or 31 cents, the sales tax is only at 209, and we've already, we're way over that. It's just
So,
an overages that is not showing in the working budget, so that was the reason for my question.
That's right. If it can't be counted on for the next year, unless council has some other way to calculate it, it's typically not included because that is too high of a risk for a municipality. That's why you don't see, we use the numbers that come from Fort Bend County to set the ad valorem rates, to calculate no new revenue. They take into account what you actually earned this year, what the values are, and what they expect that you would use next year. And that's why they provide the calculation of the no new revenue rate. The point of that is that if you were to make no further income next year than what you make this year, here's your rate. And that's why it's lower than 30 cents exactly. Okay. And Faith made a question or comment last week. I think what you're getting to is in categories where we've taken in more income than we expected, or categories that we don't spend all the money that we budgeted. That's money that could be available. You are correct. That money goes to reserves unless the council decides something else. So last year, you decided to take a 14 cent per hundred decrease in tax, in ad valorem tax, which we did. That saved about $200,000 in round numbers in taxpayer revenue. And you also took $150,000 from reserves to put toward the road project. I'm saying you because it's the same council that we had last year. For everybody, we didn't have a change of the election this year. So this council made those two decisions that were worth $350,000 to the budget. The goal was to reduce taxes for several of y'all. That was a realized goal. So I'm not denying that if there's unspent money, we would like to look at it. Where does it go? It goes to reserves until council decides that there's a worthy project, like roads, like the year of Harvey, when council decided to forward pay all expenses in the recovery and also subsidize rebuilding in the way of permits and inspections and all the things that went through that for all the rebuild. That Harvey money was $1.5 million approximately. We got reimbursed for part of it, but about $600,000 of that was a council investment in the community, and that money was never returned to us. Last week we talked about over $800,000 in road work at a period when we earned about $200,000. That's a council deciding to invest in that project. So The money doesn't go away. We're not just hoarding it for some unknown reason down the road, but it's long-term planning about emergencies, growth, repairs, projects that we don't quite know yet today, but they're part of our vision elements and our comprehensive plan. So, I mean, Faith, you didn't ask the question actually, but we were talking about that a little bit last week. I don't know if that addresses what your thoughts were about that.
I don't remember.
Okay, that's fair.
Yeah, I had a terrible headache last week, did not feel good. Do not remember.
So what we really need, from my perspective, since everybody's a little quiet today, we have to, we talked about priority of council is to do zoning. We put money in that line item, I think, unless council changes their mind, that we will continue to use that as our goal. The question that has the hardest answer is, you can see right now what the shortfall in the budget is for each of these tax rates. How much money are you willing to take from reserves or to consider a rate that will fund the most of it without dipping into reserves before you're ready to do your next big road project? Or some combination. So if we did the 30, what we've been talking about, I know this wasn't your choice, but the one that we've been working on, which also is the highest we could go this year, is the 0.309753. We need to find about $60,000 to balance the budget. If at that same rate, we still need $60,000 to balance the budget. Our no new revenue rate is, so that's almost a penny more than we're paying, than we have in place this year. The no new revenue rate is not even a penny, it's 0.297 versus the 0.30 we have right now. If we were to choose that rate, we still need to find $75,000. And the lower we go, the more money we need to find to balance our budget. I'll add one more thing, and then I guess I'll just be quiet until we all have a comment. But so last year we took $200,000 out, and we managed to keep. Shouldn't say managed to. You chose to do a road project. You funded it from reserves, all is well. As soon as that the crew is available, we have that money set aside for that. This budget is proposed with another big project of almost $200,000 for zoning. At the same rate. We do have a shortfall, but it's not another $200,000. So it's really up to the council members to discuss and decide what's our direction, and then I'll go back and work on the nuts and bolts to make it match what y'all are thinking.
If on the revenue and expense report that you gave us from last week, if these numbers are accurate, in the year that we used a 44% tax rate, we had an overage of almost $600,000. If this is your report, not mine. If that's numbers right, it's saying prior year for fiscal year end balance was $596,000. It's showing currently, realize we're not at the end of the year yet, but that we have $306,130 that is not spent. That's almost $1 million. And that was at a 44 and a 30-cent rate. To say that we don't have the ability to fund all of these projects, like in this budget, that is balanced and will work and include zoning and include roads and all of that good stuff at 21 cents.
But don't forget, it doesn't include your encumbered $76,000 expense. The one, I think
Mine?
you're talking about the one that you're working on.
She's looking at her
No, I was
own.
looking at mine.
Right, but don't forget that the encumbered $76,000 is not on the expense side of that one.
Neither is the overage of $116,000 or the interest on any type of accounts or the franchise fees that we receive and all of that
Right,
as far as revenue.
but you have to include the expense before your budget can be balanced so that you make sure your items match.
I can
That
include
they
the
can-
expense all day long of $76,000, not decrease the same categories that you did, and you're still
Okay,
way over at a 21 cent rate. That's my observation. And it works. It includes zoning, it includes the streets, it
Okay.
includes all that good stuff.
But it
Again,
does not include-
the fees are okay.
remember, I mean, just for everybody else to remember, that the version that you proposed involves cutting personnel, funding for personnel at over $100,000. So
But we-
that's the major item that funds your cutbacks, right?
It is.
Okay,
So if I add that, if I leave that cut in, I add the additional ad valorem of 116.72 to date, because that's gonna grow by a little bit, not much, but a little bit. If I add that, plus the interest on the ARPA account that is not included in last year's budget, the interest on, the expected interest on the moves that you made in May or June, whenever it was, and then the franchise fees that are not included in this as well, you have well over, or right at $200,000. So that's,
so that's a lot, I'm not saying that you were wrong, Courtney. It's a lot of ifs, maybes, we think we're gonna end up with this much money. Great, we are, however much it is, we're gonna end up with it. It's gonna be in the bank. It's a matter of the entire council deciding, are we gonna spend from reserves? If we are, we're gonna need to claim it. Let's just claim it, be honest about it. And then we'll make our plan. I think that we give advice and some commentary coming in our direction, saying lowering your tax rate that far, that when you are so heavily dependent on ad valorem because you don't have much commercial, is very risky. I mean, this is not my decision. I do not want to make any claims about what is gonna happen in the legislature this year, but there's a whole lot of talk about further restricting the ability for councils, cities, to make changes to their tax rates. Don't know if they'll do it, because I'm not trying to say that that's a threat, but it's certainly something to be considered when they put in the requirements about a 3.5% cap. I guess they weren't finished. Because big places, like the Houstons of the world, making really big moves that people aren't in the loop about until after they've done it. It has unintended consequences to people of our size, so that's something. I'd really like to hear from the rest of council about,
I can't see dropping it that much. And I can't be faith to drop it that much. Not with doing roads, increases in roads, the amount of time it would take to increase it to even catch up, how far behind we will be behind at that point. I don't see it. I should have printed out the numbers I worked on the weekend.
like, are they road related, or is it
Some of
something
them.
I could give you, or?
Now, some of them were roads, I was just going back and forth trying to make it make sense at whatever numbers. And then looking at the time value of that and the amount of time it take just to get back up to a normal level. I mean, right now, if we used 100% of the ad valorem, where we're sitting today, it would take over 10 years, roads being 10-year lifespan. If we use 100% of it, it would take more than 10 years just to replace the roads we've got, the 16 miles of road. That's using 100% of it. I keep knowing that. Other expenses, the way we're growing, the way, as soon as they ask us to pull them into the city proper, on the school project or any other ones with Twin with, we're on the hook for that, on top of only being able to grow at 0.007 cents first year max. I can't see going below 30 cents.
I agree 100% with Justin.
If you included this number here, just out of curiosity, if you included the overages on the ad valorem and the sales tax just alone, that's $168,550, excuse me, can't even read my own handwriting. If I add the prior year, fiscal year end balance, we have $596,000 that appears to have rolled over currently. Again, the year's not over. We have 306, that's $902,000 in the course of 2 years. And on your 21-cent budget, you didn't change any of those categories, like you left personnel at 211.
That's correct.
Or 210, excuse me. Deals today. So the $168,550 from this year alone, an additional collection of ad valorem and an additional collection of unexpected sales tax, more than covers that, and you can leave this budget alone. It includes your payroll, it includes your streets, it includes the zoning. We have to come up with $30,000 difference. Oh, 20, no, 30, sorry. If this is accurate, and this also does not include any interest, because you have interest on this one at $1,800, and I know we had well more than that just in the ARPA project alone.
Which is
This one here is that expense, it's the expense report, so it shows you the balance remaining. This was our current year budget of $887. This is the balance remaining, and again, this was from the 27th, so the year's not over, we got another month. But this is the prior year, so this is the prior year fiscal year end balance of $596. So if you take those current two totals, that's appears, again, if this is accurate, that we had $902,000 roll over in unexpensive. So we're saying,
before other expenses came in that we had to pay out.
well, no, that's what this is. So your expenses are here, this is your current balance, so that 306 is the difference. That's an overage. We have only, year to date, yes.
At this point in time.
We had spent 581. Now, this one is prior year balance.
Right.
So, it cost us, according to this, again, it very well may be wrong, but it cost us $581,000 year to date to operate the city. Unless there's some massive, those are the things that were spent as of August 31st. Now, the encumbered amounts are back here in your revenue, in your expenses, right? But those, see how they don't show an expense?
In that
They're just
bucket.
kind of sitting there. So
They're
that
not an
money's not
expense
spent.
until they get paid in
Right,
that report.
right.
That's right.
So,
During that time period, that 1 month, there wasn't any expenses in those.
well, it's year to date. That's current year budget.
The numbers you're showing at the back. during
Those
that
are also
month.
current year. So year-to-date expenses, and then when you go all the way back to the EDCs, you see there's nothing for year-to-date at all.
At that time, no. So all of those. have to be
Year-to-date.
paid out. Right.
Year-to-date, there hasn't been anything adjusted for it. But either way, if this is accurate, it's saying we have a pretty over, at $887,000, so not setting it aside, but separating the two. The ad valorem tax is, yes, it's at a certain amount, but at a 21-cent rate, we anticipate collecting $293,000, right? That's an average because it's an estimate. At a 30-cent rate last year, we estimated collecting $343. We actually collected $460 today. That's a $116,000 difference. So if you take those differences and then you add in the things like interest, and you add in the things like, your franchise fees and things like that, then I, just right off the bat, I can come up with $168,000, which makes a 21-cent budget work with her budget for payroll, with the roads, and with the zoning.
And there's nothing in reserve. If we have one hurricane that comes through here, if we have any kind of emergencies that we're susceptible to,
That's not touching reserves. That's
It
using
is
her
pending
budget.
from reserves.
It is.
It is pending from reserves.
It's not
So we
because
just
you're
need to call it that.
calculating it. We
I
didn't.
just need to call it that. Don't be afraid to call it that. If that's what it
If you
is,
wanna call it
then
a savings account maybe, but that's not what that's meant
No.
for. The tax dollars are not meant to be saved,
They're
they're meant to
correct.
be spent on the city and things that you're
But if
requesting
you
from
don't
the
have
city,
the
like
money to
payroll.
spend
but
that,
one thing is, remember that you just said, one of the items you said, and I didn't keep them all on my list, I apologize, is that sales tax came in quite a bit higher than anticipated. That's sales tax from purchases, not ad valorem tax. If ad valorem comes in higher, yep, it comes in higher, great for us. For that particular year, you temper your budget for the next year, or whatever your projects are, and that's why council decides what the projects are, if that's gonna be, you know, money needed for zoning or whatever else. The prior year ending was $376,000, so I'm not sure where your 500 came from, but that's a little bit
No,
misleading to say.
306 is what you show on this report that you gave us. That was the
If you
number I
look,
used.
you were talking about prior year, all the way over to the right, of 376,924.
No, I was talking about the actual budget remaining balance for this year alone of 306.
Right, and we're not through paying our bills and things that will come in for this year yet, but let's say,
Yeah, that final
let's say
column is
200 were to be
prior
left.
year. So even so, I mean, even if you.
Or
if you only have-
150 to be left. We could have 150 to be left. And that money then goes to reserves, and y'all are deciding, are we gonna spend that money from reserve for next year? Because we've already adjusted, increased ad valorem based on value, home values, using the formulation that comes from the county, to if they think we're gonna make more money in ad valorem because we have more properties with higher values, then that's part of the calculation in the budget that's proposed. We don't want to be over, but we also just don't want to cut up our nose to spite our face for long-term needs. That's what we're talking about, If we need $4 million to do roads, or $2 or whatever it is, that's why that discussion is happening now. So if we take the 14-cent decrease that was taken last year, and Councilmember Cox is proposing another 9 cents this year. Is my math wrong?
you must right.
I'm doing it in my head, y'all call me out if I'm doing it wrong. That's 24 cents, more than 50% in 2 years. Are we sure about our long-term plan if you wanna go that deep?
no, we're not thinking about long-term at all if we do that. We are setting the city assignment up for failure.
We're actually increasing spending by
Courtney,
significant amounts.
So what you're saying is what Lori provided here and what you provided last week, Lori's report is wrong, even though she's got the phone viewing and she sees exactly how it's going to divvy out into the buckets per se. Is that what I'm hearing? Is hers is wrong? We wouldn't need to come up with $198,572,000 to cover everything that we want to do?
No,
Mm-hmm.
that's not what you're hearing at all.
Then do tell, what are you saying then?
The money, we already have the money, we've already collected
No, we
it.
don't.
Yes, we do, we've already collected.
Are you afraid of, what are you afraid of? Do you realize that change and growth are coming sooner than you realize? Wouldn't you like to have a police force and whatever else 5 years down the road? Do you have savings of your own?
none of this is pertaining to this.
Oh, it is,
particular
because I
meeting.
don't think you understand what we're doing here.
Lori, are we making a decision tonight, or are we going to have the same conversation over and over again?
I hope we're not gonna keep having the same conversation over and over again, but we are. If we can't find room to compromise, I mean, our choices are come to an agreement that everybody can live with, and then y'all will be ready for the vote on the 17th. Don't come to an agreement everyone can live with, and we'll still have a vote on the 17th, because we'll be defaulting, I don't wanna use the word default, we'll be, legal language I gave you in writing from Olson and Olson. We'll be voting on the lower of the no new revenue tax rate or the rate adopted in the preceding year.
Why would we not
So-
have a vote? That's what I wanna know.
Well-
I read the Olson and Olson thing. What would stop us from not voting on a tax rate?
We will vote, but if
We don't
council
have to
doesn't
agree,
pass
we're
it.
not gonna agree. We can already tell that.
Right, so I was
So-
I'm sorry, Vern, just go ahead.
You know, so I read the Olson and Olson thing, but why would that, I mean, is there some way that somebody's gonna stop us from voting on a tax rate and a budget?
No, nobody's
Okay.
gonna stop you from voting.
Okay,
She's
But if
saying
you don't come to
can't
an agreement.
we don't have to.
But,
We don't have
but
to
you
all
do
do
have
it.
to have 4 people
You
of
do have
this
to have a
board.
supermajority on the budget, so we need 4 people to
Three
agree.
people.
4, super majority.
4 people.
Okay. Well,
And so if there is no agreement, then we, in this case, would be using the no new revenue rate, because it is slightly lower than the rate from this year. And
We didn't have a super
It'll be-
majority last year, how did we manage that?
you did. You did have
You did.
a majority last year, of 4.
that too.
I'm just trying to get us all, what else is needed? What else can I provide, if anything, to help us get to the place where we have the supermajority, or something that you all can all agree on, so that everybody can leave with some degree of satisfaction about it. You know what they say, the best deals are made when everybody's a little bit unhappy and everybody's a little bit happy. Just figure out how to get there.
Yes, let's.
If we, so Bernard, you asked, I forgot, maybe it wasn't you, maybe Courtney asked it about, are we just gonna have the same discussion next week? We don't need to. If we leave with a consensus of what we're gonna do, then we'll do that on the 17th, and I should say, is it the 16th? Is the budget, and the 17th is the tax rate, right?
Correct.
So we would vote on Monday the 16th for the budget that matches whatever the tax rate that you all have shared consensus on. And then the next day, you'll do the hearing and the vote for the tax rate.
I don't think we can base our decisions on ifs. I need positives for me to make a sound decision. I cannot, in my right mind, go down to 21 cents, period.
I agree. I can't.
I think, I'll state it again, the zoning project has got to be at the forefront. I see quite a few properties around for sale, and I'm scared because they are acres, they aren't just an acre. Let's not forget that one next to Roper's is still up for sale. It's 90-something acres. I know that growth is coming, and it's coming a lot quicker than we realize. wait until Orchid Estate starts flourishing. We're gonna have a lot more people here. And how are we gonna control them? I think we need to look past the end of our noses and actually look at the bigger picture. And I think we're having problems with that right now. I want the best for Simonton, and 21 cents isn't gonna do it. I know for a fact that's below poverty level, and why would we do that to ourselves? And let's face it, at 21 cents, we're not gonna get roads done, period. And if we do, it might be a block, but would be, done correctly, in my opinion. I don't think filling potholes is the answer. I think that's a waste of money. We have, I don't know, 7 or 8 layers of pavement on our roads as is, and that's why they're caving the way that they are. So I think that is something that really needs to be considered. And I do not think we should be cutting from the future, or the budget for the to account for hiring a city manager. I hope that that is something we get done this year, because we need it badly. So for us not to plan for that now would be stupid, because we don't want to revisit the budget halfway in the year, because then where are we gonna make cuts? Right now, you're asking us to take $59,047 out of reserves, if that's what we so choose. Well, if we cut that 110 or whatever it is for the city manager, that means we're gonna have to come up with another 110 later. So we're back to $200,000. That's not right. Don't need to be doing that. That's my 2 cents.
Thank you, ma'am. Faith, do you have some else to share?
I've also spent a lot of time looking at all this and looking at the numbers. I looked at what Courtney proposed last week, and I know that at the back when people were paying 21, 22, 23 cents, they had a lot of road work that they got done. I think that there's a lot of money that's spent where we can tighten our belt some. Maybe one example is these 4 reports for 30 cents, 29 cents, 24, and 21. Out of 800 pages it's printed, the only numbers that change were on the top page. 4 little numbers. This is a show and it's a waste. Those numbers are exactly the same numbers on every page. And I think there's a lot of that in the city. I think that we can go with the 21 cent rate, and I've pretty much made up my mind I'm not gonna move off of that. I think we can do better with how we're using the funds that we have and the funds that we've been taking from the citizens every single year, instead of just putting it in the bank. I do not like calling it reserves. It's what money that we have in the bank. Reserves, by definition, is money that's set aside for certain purposes, and that's what the word you've used, encumbered, here. So,
Encumbered means it's spoken for.
right, and so does reserves. Yes, look it up. So it is money in the
This is
bank.
money already spent. The
This
project just
is,
hasn't
I'm
happened yet.
speaking, Kelly. When, and I haven't just, I probably have 15 hours of looking at this and calculating and thinking, and I don't know how many hours you have in it, Kelly, but I have a lot of hours in it, and it's not a decision that I've come by lightly. But I do agree, and Courtney can say it much more eloquently. She can throw out those numbers where I'm not as good at that. But I have looked at them, and I do think that we can do it. So, and I think we have money that is sitting in the bank. If we need, we're not gonna do 16 miles of road all at the same time. We all know that. So, haven't done roads for years. So, we need, I think, it's just a little tightening of the belt instead of, 4 pages instead of 800 pages. So, that's my 2 cents on that.
Thank you. I will just give one reference back to the completed road projects, that the list and the support material that I provided last week, that from 2016 to 2020, quite a few road projects were done. So, granted, it's 2024 and we haven't done any since 2020, but there's been work overtime being done. And the discussion was that we spent, we had $835,000 worth of work done. During the same time period, we earned just over $200,000 in sales tax, which is dedicated to that. So it always takes money more than just the sales tax, 0.25% for the roads, but
You know what our tax
they
rate
have
was in
been, they have
2020?
been doing that. Your tax rate in
You know what the
2020?
ad valorem tax rate was in 2020 when this $845,000 was spent? 35, excuse me. 835,000.
I do.
Foreign income was 200,000, and our sales tax income was close to 200,000 as well.
But
Our
was there a
sales tax
zoning
was-
project included?
Our sales tax dedicated to roads though is 0.25%. So even though we might have had $200,000 in sales tax come in, only 0.25% is dedicated. to
Certainly, but
roads. That was the
I'm
point.
saying in.
Well, you wanna argue and call it out like I'm hiding money. I am
No,
not,
no,
so
no.
let's just be clear.
I'm not at all, actually, I was giving you quite some praise, because in those times when we had a lower tax rate, and also lower property values, to Burns's point last week, and less sales tax, because we employed several companies to go out and find the missing dollars for us or whatnot. We had a much lower budget, and we're still, as well as an ad valorem tax rate, we were able to accomplish a feat of almost $1 million. And we employed a city administrator and a city secretary at the same time. And we're still at that lower rate. Our property tax value, our property values, I should say, have increased substantially, even for those of us that are homesteaded and whatnot. And our sales tax, just money, everything's gone up. It's called inflation. But when we continue to take sales tax from everybody at a higher rate on a higher property value and not spend the money, we just sweep it into an account for a rainy day fund, that's only further inflating the market, especially when we take it and we put it into a money market account to earn more money on it. So, and we're not utilizing, or we're not kind of claiming those things in interest income. We have the possibility, on this 21-cent budget, you have $198,000, your budget, that you put together, including the payroll and everything that you had kept the same. At a 21-cent budget, you show $198,572. I'm telling you that in our budget versus actual, I have identified $200,000 right off the top that is not in there. And if we are claiming there's $198,000, we have $200,000 right here that has not been spent this year. We didn't expect it. Good on us, we got it, but we don't just get to ignore it. You know what I mean?
Absolutely not.
And I don't like to just, the thought of, push that aside and just keep collecting. So my thoughts, and I'll hush and leave it at that, is I really like this 21-cent budget. And I feel like we can make it work. And still accomplish all the things.
say, yeah, you asked me about the rate. Our average, our 10-year average is 0.2586, or 26 cents. That's from 2014 to 2023. Not remember which year you asked me about with the
In
21 cent rate, but
You can't really average, because that 44.5 cents really threw off the average. That's
so in 2014, it was 26 cents.
Mhm.
I mean, you could argue that we had a much smaller staff, we had much fewer projects that we were doing. We still were running at 26
But it
cents.
went
The
down
goal is to
that
get
way,
our
no?
commercial up, like significantly, so that the burden can just be off of the taxpayers a whole lot more. When you get to other cities like Fulshear or whoever else, they're down in the 20s because they have so much more sales tax coming from commercial. So that's our goal, you know, and you've all agreed about that, with the EDCs getting recharged this year. We're well on the way to working towards that, so. Not trying to keep all the burden in one place, for sure.
That tax rate went down after that, did it not?
After which,
After the 26 cents a tree.
yeah, we were 26, 24, we were 23, then back up to 24 in 2018, kind of just bounced around up and down between 26 and 21 or so. And then in 22 was when we took the tax rate up to 44 cents to fund the comp plan. And then so last year, you all rolled it back, 14 cents.
And we didn't spend, as they said, we didn't spend all the money that we've collected,
We
at
collected
least
more
the
than we
last 2
budgeted.
years.
Yeah, we collected more than we budgeted
Right.
for, yeah.
And I hate to keep talking because I'm just repeating myself. We more than double the tax rate in a year when our properties are worth more. It's just, it's so much common sense to know when your property values go way up, you can have the same or lower tax rate to get the same money. You can argue that all you want, but that's the true
Right.
fact. We've got reserves, we've got cash, we've got whatever you want to call it, we've got almost $3 million in the bank. And what we're talking about doing here on a 21 cent rate is $198,000 difference. And that'll help the people in this town, in this city, with their expenses. And that's where I am, and that's why, I said it before, just saying it again. When you think things aren't right on certain things, I adamantly think this is wrong. Take money from people when we already have a lot of money. And we're gonna easily make these payments in this budget. And to not try to give some savings to some people after what happened 2 years ago, I just don't think it's right.
Well, you did give them 14
What happened?
cents of savings after what happened 2 years ago.
Excuse me?
You did give them 14 cents of savings
Yeah,
after
we
what
did.
happened 2 years ago.
Yeah, and now I wanna give them some more. And since we're talking about, everybody agreeing, it was Justin that wanted the 30 cent rate last year, I wanted a lower rate. You don't have to remember, but I wanted it. And to compromise, I went with his 30 cents. Okay, so, yeah, I compromised. Now I want to go down more. We've got the money, we've taken it in, we have not spent it. Whatever the reason is, we haven't spent it, why we haven't done it on the roads, supposedly the county won't come do them or whatever, or we're down on the list. But whatever reason, we haven't spent this money. And we keep taking it and putting it in a savings account. And that's what it is, a savings account for the city. Never gonna agree with that. I don't think it's right.
Would
So
you,
I compromise, now I'll ask you to compromise.
would you?
I'm talking to Justin.
Oh, sorry. Would you propose take a big chunk of reserve money and amp up what you've asked for in roads work instead? Like,
How
I
would
think
you,
you're,
okay, let me ask a question, I didn't mean to cut you off. How do we get it done? How do we get them to do it? The county. Because that's what I've been told, is that they were on the list or down the line or something, right?
They had more work than they could
Yeah.
complete for this year.
Yeah, so
And,
how
I mean,
do
they're
you-
still doing it, but.
Let's say we had $10 million. How do we get them to do it?
All right, well, so here are the choices. We
Okay.
ask them, and we tell them what our budget and how many roads and all the things, like we usually do. If that's not gonna move fast enough, they'll be honest and tell us what their outlook is. We can always hire it to be done by a third party.
Oh, yeah, and then we
It's,
get paid
then
out.
we get less mileage done for the dollar, but it also gets done. So, I mean, I think people would be thrilled if their road got on the list, and it might happen in the next 12 months versus no roads and also a lower rate. I mean, I'm not saying they wouldn't like to have both, but maybe that's where you amp up. If you think that there's money that we should go ahead and put to work, well, let's decide what that project is and put it to work. All right, is there additional work or input or budgeting that you would, what can I provide, I guess is the question. We've got versions here. If we're talking about 21 or 30, then I could certainly put more time into making 21 match what you all are discussing. So everybody's working on the same page. If we want some different breakdown of what the money that's in reserves by account is and what's committed and what's not, some variation of what we've already received, we can work on that. How do we get what you need?
You take this 21 cent budget and make the changes to other than the ad valorem column I made my suggestions on where we could cut, and even leaving it in yours with $198,000 shortage, okay, in spending, that still is increasing our spending in this city by almost hyperbole, almost $500,000 to include the zoning, and, I mean, we're going from 887 to 1.2 in spending.
But not really,
at
so
21
that's
cents.
overstating it, Courtney, by about 50%, but I would be happy to put it together for you. Because I'm not looking at it, 351,000, whatever the number is, of that is encumbered.
I understand, but
So
I think that.
you gotta remove that and not say we're spending another $500,000. We're not, we're spending money we previously promised.
I
But
understand.
I'll be happy to,
In
put
balancing
together-
the budget, I think that the confusion here, at least for a lot of constituents and people that I talk to, the confusion is in the ad valorem being seen as, oh my God, you're lowering the budget, you've gotta be doing away with something, right? And that's not the case. Our ad valorem will include more than what we have virtually received in several years, in a very long time. The ad valorem is a piece of our revenue. We're taking the additional increase in sales tax, not just for roads, but mixed beverage taxes, sales taxes, the additional revenues, and just using it in a more wise way. And we're not decreasing our spending at all. We had $887,252,000 in the budget last year that we anticipated spending the completion of. I show at current stance an overage currently sitting in the bank of $306,000. This budget working at 21 cents with an ad valorem percentage of our revenues is at 1.211, $338. So that is almost $500,000 worth of an increase in our spending within
But
our
it's
city.
not. You are misrepresenting by saying that. You must subtract the $341,500 to
Am I
get your real number.
misrepresenting
You
it,
are when you
or-
state that we're increasing our spending to 1 point, whatever, I'm sorry,
Okay, well,
whichever number
let me
you
say
just
it in a
said.
different way. We are choosing at this point to allocate those monies to increase our spending on different projects by almost $500,000. So instead of, like last year, instead of saying we're only gonna spend $887,000 and we're gonna include the, the different projects and the roads and those kind of things, now we're saying, we're gonna give a little bit back more to the people, use the overages on our sales taxes and the overages on our, permits and licensing and all of this other good stuff, and we're still gonna have 1.2 that is either counted, already credited, already, not credited, but already received, and all of that good stuff. So yeah, we are increasing our budget, and we're still accomplishing all those things. If we would include the interest revenue that you are anticipating earning from the Cedars accounts, that is close to $90,000, a little over. If we include the overages of this year's ad valorem taxes, that's $116,000. That's $200,000. That's your shortage, and it leaves your budget that you've already presented exactly the same at 21 cents. That's my take.
Okay, I appreciate your take. I do not agree with you, but I will be happy to do the work on it for everybody to be working on the same version. What else can I provide? Other counsel? What do you need?
Tori, what did you say a moment ago before Courtney went on her rant about breakdown of the reserves?
I was asking if it's helpful to council to have a recap in a different way or a combined way. I've given you the information about what's in the accounts. It's part in Cedars and part in operating. Is there a version of that where the encumbered money is noted for each one? Would it make it any easier to understand and see where, if we think we have this big pile of uncommitted money, well, how much is the pile, which account is it in? I don't know, I'm just asking, can I give it to you in a different way that's more comprehensive?
Are all other previous projects agreed to by previous council, have all those been paid for and that's come out of the reserves and, or the money set aside for them? Or is there something that's still lingering, anything like that?
The only thing that is open are the only ones that are listed in the budget project for this year. For example, the ARPA grant money and money that this council has committed, things like that. We've closed out the other grants, if that's kind of what you're asking. Okay, nothing else for you, Ferns? I mean, I'll do the 21 cent version that we just talked about. Anything else specifically that you need? Faith, anything particularly?
No, but when you do the 21 cent budget, it'd be good if it was balanced, not just running out a bunch of paper.
Well, y'all asked for the 21 and the 24, so
Yeah,
I don't have another way to give it to you just electronically.
Courtney's was balanced, and yours was, none of these are. So
That's
it's
correct,
just
that's why I
paper.
noted that none of them were balanced.
Right.
Because frankly, there's been 3 work days since our last meeting.
So if you give it
I will be happy
what
to do that.
Burns wants, the 21 cents, we'd like it balanced,
Okay?
because it's a waste of time and paper to do it unbalanced.
Okay. I have your request on the 21. Anything else? Okay, Justin? And you can also call me, send a message, whatever, if y'all think of something else you'd like to have that would help this decision be ready to finalize. Are we gonna meet next Tuesday? Go over it and try to get there. That's our last meeting before the 17th, when I
don't think we have an option.
we set our
do we?
goal as, let's do our
If we're not voting at
our
these,
budget on the 16th and our tax on the 17th. It'll be hearings and budgets that day.
if we're not voting and taking action at these particular workshops, like tonight was a set meeting, or should have been, it was kind of our reserve day for the meeting, and it also wasn't on the original schedule. So I didn't know if we were voting tonight or not to make any sort of decision to alleviate next week's meeting, but, I mean, if we don't have a balanced budget at any point, I would prefer to not have another meeting, to say the least, but, I mean, we have to do the budget before we can do the tax rate, and we also have to determine where we wanna be in that category. I get what you're trying to do, but without any sort of idea of, I mean, it kind of forces me into a corner to just say, okay, well, I proposed one. But if we're not.
All right, we don't have to post until Friday. We can't wait to make this decision of whether we're gonna meet or not. But today's already Tuesday. It's a short week again. We do not have to meet next week. I mean, I can email you the versions. Obviously, you can look at them and we can communicate individually with Nancy.
If we are to meet next week, would we vote? No.
No, we won't be voting until
Until the 17th.
because it's a workshop, so we will be voting on the
Okay.
16th and the 17th.
Isn't
We're
next
trying to
Tuesday
do
your
is-
birthday? I don't think that's how you wanna spend your birthday.
Excuse me,
Yes,
when
sir.
is it that we vote? Is it the Monday, the 16th?
So Monday the 16th, you have a hearing and you adopt your budget. And then on Tuesday the 17th,
The public.
we have a hearing and you adopt your tax rate, which funds your budget. So it'll be 2 days back to back.
Yeah.
They cannot be on the same day,
Right.
is why it's. Okay. I'll email it.
So do we have an answer? Are we meeting Tuesday or not?
If we can't vote on it and make any types of decisions until we see the working proposal, right, I should say, proposed 21-cent budget, I would prefer not to meet. I'll say that. I know it's Faith's birthday as well next Tuesday, so she doesn't, I'm sure that's not how she wants to spend her birthday as well. I don't know.
I'm open either, I go either way.
Okay, I'm gonna sleep on it and get back to you. How about that? I don't need to meet just for the sake of meeting either, so within this week, we'll get you the 21-cent version by email. And I'll get back to you the next day or so about, are we gonna try and meet one last time and discuss, or are we ready to just hang tight until the 16th? You'll contact me if you need anything or if something comes up that you thought of. We will adjourn at 7:28.